My name is Marissa Kane, and I'm 32 years old. At 2 in the morning, my sister did something I never thought she'd dare. She slipped into my bedroom while I was dead asleep and quietly took my credit card. By sunrise, $15,000 was gone, funneled into a first-class trip to Japan and a shopping spree with our cousin. A week later, she came back as if nothing had happened, and my father said, "Stop pretending she would never touch your money." He didn't know that I'd been preparing for that moment for a long time. Before that night, my life had felt stable, hard-earned stable. I'd worked for years to get here, a career as a senior financial analyst, my own apartment downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a sense of security I could wrap around myself like armor. But my sister, Bella, 3 years younger and the uncontested favorite of our parents, had a way of cracking that armor without even trying. Growing up in a middle-class Boston neighborhood, my parents, Eleanor and Thomas, worked hard for us, but they never hid their bias, even if they didn't realize it. When Bella shattered our neighbor's window at 7, they called it an accident and told her she had a great throwing arm. When she failed math in 5th grade, the teacher was blamed for not nurturing her creativity. Me? I was the responsible one. My grades had to be spotless, my room perfect. Mistakes were met not with empathy, but with disappointment. That was the rhythm of our household. Bella charmed her way out of trouble, and I learned to stand on my own 2 feet. By 16, I had a part-time job at a bookstore, saving every dollar for college. My parents would help, they said, but I'd need to contribute. Bella, meanwhile, drifted between hobbies and friend groups, changing interests like outfits. In college, I learned the art of exhaustion, juggling work, scholarship, gigs, and internships, while keeping a GPA just shy of perfection. After graduation, I crawled through the job market, enduring rejection after rejection before landing a junior analyst role at Morton Financial. I worked 12-hour days, took on projects no one else wanted, and climbed the ladder until I became a senior analyst. That promotion bought me my apartment, my sanctuary, and a financial security I protected fiercely. Part of that security was a premium black Excelsior card with a $15,000 limit. I rarely used it, but it was a symbol of everything I'd built. Bella knew about that card. She'd joked about it before, teasing me for being one of those people who could buy anything. As if I hadn't scraped and bled for years to get here. Bella's own path was different. 3 incomplete college programs, a string of short-lived jobs, a breakup with a boyfriend who discovered she was lying about their finances. Our parents always caught her when she fell, covering her rent, replacing her repossessed car, even co-signing leases she'd inevitably default on. They called it support. I called it enabling. 6 months before the theft, Bella lost her latest job for chronic tardiness. A few weeks later, she asked me for $2,000 to buy business clothes for interviews. I refused. She stormed out of our parents' house that night, calling me selfish, and my parents gave me the look, the one that meant, "Why can't you just give in?" What I didn't know then was that my no planted something in her mind, a plan. The day before it happened, I was buried in a major project, running on 4 hours of sleep a night. At 7:30 p.m., my phone rang. Bella's voice was smaller than usual, a kind of forced fragility. "Marissa, I hate to ask, but I need a place to stay tonight," she said. "Had a huge fight with Tiffany. Can't go back there." I hesitated. I had an important presentation at 9 a.m. and I needed sleep. But the thought of her sleeping in her car gnawed at me. "Fine," I said. She arrived 45 minutes later with a bag too big for one night. Her eyes were slightly red, though whether from tears or allergies I couldn't tell. We had a simple pasta dinner. She told me half-formed details about her fight with Tiffany, something about groceries and borrowed clothes, but her story didn't quite match her tone. As we cleaned up, she asked, "So, what time do you leave for work?" 7:30, I said, rinsing dishes. She nodded thoughtfully. "You've been sleeping okay? You look tired." I shrugged. "Insomnia. Been worse this week." She kept asking small, odd questions. How secure the building was, whether my bedroom door ever stuck, if I knew my neighbors well. Each one innocent enough alone, but together. Now I see it for what it was. That night, I set up the couch for her. In my bedroom, I placed my purse and wallet on my nightstand like always. My black Excelsior card was in its usual place. I swallowed my prescription sleep aid, set my alarm, and let exhaustion pull me under. I didn't hear her get up at 2 a.m. I didn't hear her walk down the hall. And I definitely didn't hear the quiet click of my bedroom door opening. When I look back on that night, the signs were there. Sharp little details I ignored because I wanted to believe my sister just needed a couch and some kindness. Bella had been restless all evening. While we ate, she kept glancing at the artwork on my walls, the new coffee maker on my counter, the rug I'd saved 3 months for. It wasn't admiration, it was calculation, as if she were running numbers in her head. After dinner, I noticed her phone never left her hand. She typed with short, quick bursts, pausing only when I spoke directly to her. At the time, I assumed she was venting to a friend about her roommate drama. Later, I'd realized she was finalizing her plan. I was bone-tired, but Bella seemed oddly alert, prowling around the apartment under the pretense of stretching her legs. She even wandered into my office, pretending to admire my work setup, her eyes darting toward the filing cabinet where I kept my important documents. "Nice place," she said from the doorway, a faint smirk on her lips. "Must be nice knowing you've made it." The comment hung in the air. I forced a polite smile. "It's been a lot of work." She shrugged like effort was optional in life. "Some people are just lucky, I guess." That was my cue to wrap up the night. I showed her the guest blankets, pointed out where the bathroom was, and reminded her to lock the door if she stepped out. She nodded along, but I caught her gaze flicker toward my bedroom before she turned away. In my room, I went through my bedtime ritual. Purse on the nightstand, wallet in the same zipped compartment, phone plugged in next to the lamp. My body was so heavy from exhaustion and the prescription sleep aid that I barely noticed the wind rattling the window. I closed my eyes and sank into the kind of deep, dreamless sleep that never comes without chemical help. That's when Bella made her move. Around 2 a.m., she eased off the couch, moving barefoot across the living room carpet. The glow from her phone screen lit her face in fragments. Sharp cheekbones, wide eyes, the tight line of her mouth. She paused outside my door, head tilted slightly, listening. The sound of my breathing, slow and heavy, told her I was far away in a medicated fog. She opened the door just wide enough to slip inside. She didn't touch my purse right away. Instead, she stood by my bed for almost a full minute, her gaze fixed on me. Not in affection, not in hesitation, just making sure I was gone to the world. Then, with deliberate precision, she lifted the purse, unzipped the wallet, and slid out the black Excelsior card. In the bathroom, under the muted light, she took photos of both sides. She also removed my driver's license, memorizing my billing address before slipping it back into place. She wasn't done. Back in my room, she picked up my phone, held it over my sleeping face, and unlocked it with facial recognition. She navigated to my banking app, turned off purchase notifications, and set up message forwarding to her own number. Every move was clean, practiced, and eerily quiet. At one point, I stirred, a shift of my arm, a sigh, and she froze. Her shoulders stiffened, fingers curling around the phone. But when I settled again, she exhaled and resumed as if nothing had happened. Within minutes, she was back in the living room, laptop open. The first-class tickets to Tokyo went through first. $6,000. Then the Park Hyatt Tokyo reservation for 7 nights, $3,500. Designer pre-orders, another $5,500. She didn't just spend my money. She timed it so every major transaction would process while I was unconscious, with a departure scheduled before I'd even pour my first cup of coffee. Before leaving, she scribbled a note on my kitchen notepad. "Emergency at Tiffany's. Had to run. Thanks for letting me crash. Love you, B." The pen left an almost imperceptible scratch in the paper, the kind you get when you're writing fast but trying to look casual. By 5:15 a.m., she was in a rideshare, the note left neatly on the coffee table, the blankets folded on the couch as if nothing had happened. She was already on her way to meet Olivia at the airport, boarding passes in hand. In my apartment, I slept, heavy, oblivious, defenseless. The first thing I remember is the buzzing. It wasn't my alarm. That familiar chime was still 45 minutes away, but a low, insistent vibration on the nightstand. I opened my eyes to the watery light of early morning, the aftertaste of sleep medication clinging to my tongue. My phone screen glowed with a stack of unread messages. The first one made my stomach twist. "Excelsior card alert. Purchase approved. $6,000. International Airways. I blinked hard, reading it again. 6,000? I scrolled. Excelsior card alert. Purchase approved. $3,500. Park Haya, Tokyo. Excelsior card alert. Purchase approved. $2,800. Ginza Luxury Collections. Excelsior card alert. Purchase approved. $1,700. Tokyo Electronics Direct. Excelsior card alert. You have reached 100% of your credit limit. The room tilted. I sat up too fast, clutching my phone. My black Excelsior card was right where it always was, zipped inside my wallet, in my purse, on my nightstand. How? The word came out as a whisper to no one. I called the number on the back of the card, my voice cracking as I told the customer service rep the transactions weren't mine. He was polite, detached, like he'd handled 100 of these calls before breakfast. We'll transfer you to the fraud department, ma'am, he said. While on hold, I noticed the guest blankets on the couch were gone, folded neatly, and there was a note. Emergency at Tiffany's. Had to run. Thanks for letting me crash. Love you, B. Something about the handwriting made my skin prickle, a little too careful, like she wanted it to be found. The fraud department rep explained the kicker. The transactions were verified via your phone. My phone? It's been here all night, I said. Yes, ma'am. The verification codes were entered correctly. The billing address matched your records. I set the phone down and opened the settings menu. Notifications from my banking app were turned off. Text forwarding had been toggled on and then off again. That's when I knew. I dialed Bella, straight to voicemail, again. Same. I tried Tiffany. Fight? Tiffany repeated when I mentioned it. What fight? She told me she was staying with your parents this week to help them with something. The knot in my stomach cinched tighter. My hands shook as I opened Instagram. And there it was, the photo that made my blood go cold. Bella, in an airport terminal, boarding pass in one manicured hand, arms slung around our cousin Olivia. The caption, surprise trip with my favorite cousin, Tokyo, first class. Posted 30 minutes ago. I didn't think. I called my parents, my mother answered, voice groggy. Mom, Bella stole my credit card info. She's charged $15,000 and is on a flight to Tokyo right now with Olivia. A pause. Then, defensive steel in her tone. Marissa, that's absurd. Bella would never do something like that. She posted about it on Instagram. Maybe she used her own card and the bank mixed things up, my mother said. I could hear my father in the background asking what was going on. He came on the line. Marissa, this is a serious accusation. Bella has her faults, but she would never steal from family. I closed my eyes. Dad, I'm looking at the charges, and the photo, and her boarding pass. Maybe you gave her permission and forgot, he offered. You've been stressed lately. That old, familiar feeling rose, the one I'd carried since childhood. Doubting myself, wondering if maybe I was wrong. But no, this wasn't a misunderstanding. I'm calling the police, I said. And for the first time that morning, there was silence on the other end. The local police station was busier than I'd expected for a weekday morning, the air thick with the scent of burnt coffee and damp wool coats. I sat in a molded plastic chair, clutching a folder I'd thrown together on instinct. Credit card statements, screenshots of Bella's Instagram post, and the note she'd left behind. After nearly an hour, Officer Garcia, a woman with tired eyes and a no-nonsense voice, called me back. This happens more than you'd think, she said, after I explained everything. Family fraud cases are tricky. A lot of people drop the charges once the pressure starts. I won't, I told her, surprising myself with the certainty in my own voice. She nodded, took my statement, and asked clarifying questions about how Bella could have accessed my information. I mentioned the phone, the forwarded texts, the card still in my possession. Garcia scribbled notes without judgment. Because the card was never physically stolen, this will be classified as identity theft, she said. Prosecution's possible, but be ready. Your family may turn on you before this is over. They already have, I thought. From the station, I went straight to my bank. In person, the fraud rep was far less sympathetic than I'd hoped. Since the security codes came from your phone, these look like authorized transactions, he said, tapping the desk with his pen. We'll investigate, but it could take up to 90 days. In the meantime, you're responsible for the minimum payment. 2 weeks until rent was due. Utilities, insurance, and a dozen smaller bills waiting in line. Even with my savings, the strain felt like someone pressing a weight against my chest. And while I was calculating the damage, Bella was in the sky, sipping champagne. That afternoon, her trip began unfolding in real time across social media. An Instagram story from their first-class seats, Olivia clinking glasses with Bella, a geotagged post from the Park Hyatt Tokyo lobby, marble floors gleaming beneath their designer sneakers. By nightfall, there were photos of shopping bags stacked in their hotel suite, price tags still dangling. Olivia captioned one picture, "Best surprise ever from the world's most generous cousin. Blessed. Tokyo shopping spree." It was like they wanted me to choke on the evidence. I saved every post, every story, every scrap of proof. That evening, my parents called again. My mother's voice carried that falsely bright tone she used when trying to smooth things over. "We spoke to Bella," she said. "She says she won the tickets in an online contest and Olivia's parents gave them spending money as a gift." I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "And you believe that?" "It's more believable than her stealing from you," my father said. "You need to drop this, Marissa. Don't ruin your relationship with your sister over what could be a bank error." A bank error, as if a clerical glitch had booked them into a $3,500 a week hotel. When I told them I'd already filed a police report, my father accused me of trying to destroy Bella's life. My mother started crying, muttering about how she'd failed as a parent. By the time I hung up, I had messages from half the extended family. Aunt Susan suggested I was jealous of Bella's free spirit. Uncle Robert asked if maybe I'd given her the card for an emergency. Cousin Taylor wondered if this was an overreaction. Only Uncle William, my father's brother and a realist, sent something different. "Have you spoken to a lawyer? Protect yourself, no matter what the family says." That night, I barely slept. Memories kept resurfacing. Bella smashing my science fair project when we were kids, opening my Christmas presents early, copying my college essay. Each time, my parents had told me to be understanding. Each time, my boundaries had been painted as the problem. This time, I wasn't going to let them rewrite the story. By the next morning, I had a plan forming. Not a complete one, but enough to steady the shaking in my hands. Stephanie, my closest friend since college, came over with coffee and breakfast sandwiches. She took one look at my face and didn't bother with small talk. She took it, didn't she? I nodded, sliding my laptop toward her. The photos, the charges, the note, all laid out like evidence in a crime drama. Stephanie's jaw tightened. "Your family's in denial because admitting this means admitting they've failed her, and you." Her bluntness was a relief. No coddling, no, maybe it's a misunderstanding. We spent the morning cataloging everything. The timestamps on the purchases, the matching Instagram posts, the IP address from my apartment on my online banking records. The list was damning. Still, I knew my parents would cling to any scrap of doubt. I called Derek, a law school friend who specialized in financial crimes. His voice was calm but carried a weight. "Marissa, you have a strong case, but pressing charges against a sibling? That's nuclear. Family relationships don't always recover." I thought about Bella laughing in her Instagram stories, about my father telling me to drop it, about my mother's teary insistence that I was overreacting. "This isn't about the money," I told him. "It's about stopping the pattern." That evening, I got another wave of updates from Bella's trip. Sushi platters so expensive they came with a chef's bow, bags from high-end boutiques, selfies on Tokyo rooftops. What burned wasn't just the theft. It was her utter lack of shame, her confidence that there would be no consequences because there never had been. By Saturday, I knew they were due back the next day. My parents, of course, had arranged a welcome home dinner. I wasn't invited, a fact I discovered through a group text I was conveniently left out of, but which a cousin forwarded to me. It wasn't just a snub, it was control. If I wasn't in the room, they could manage the story. I decided to change that. I pulled my evidence into a neat professional folder. Credit card statements, screenshots, receipts, and one last piece I hadn't mentioned to anyone yet. A surprise. If they were going to force me into the role of the villain, I might as well arrive with the full script. Sunday evening came with that sharp November chill that seeps into your bones before you even step outside. I dressed like I was heading to a boardroom. Black dress, low heels, minimal jewelry. This wasn't a family dinner. This was a deposition. The drive to my parents' house felt longer than it had in years. Every mile was a countdown. By the time I pulled into their driveway, the knot in my stomach was so tight I thought I might be sick. There were already half a dozen cars parked outside. Through the dining room window, I could see everyone gathered. Aunt Susan's bright hair, Uncle Robert's plaid shirt, my grandparents seated at the far end. And there, at the center of it all, was Bella, laughing, animated, unwrapping small gift bags she'd brought back from Tokyo like some benevolent queen returning from her travels. I rang the doorbell instead of using my old key. My mother opened it, surprise flickering into irritation before she masked it. "Marissa, we weren't expecting you," she said carefully. "I wouldn't miss Bella's homecoming," I replied, stepping past her into the foyer. The room went quieter than it should have for such a large gathering. All eyes shifted toward me. Bella froze mid-story, a delicate paper fan in her hand. For a fraction of a second, her smile faltered, and I caught the flicker of something. Not guilt exactly, but the sharp awareness of being cornered. "Marissa," she said, brightening artificially. "I didn't know you were coming. Look, I even brought you something." "How was Tokyo?" I asked, my voice steady. $15,000 worth of luxury must have been quite an experience. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. My father stood from his chair. "If you've come to cause a scene—" "Actually, Dad," I cut in, "I think the whole family should hear this. Since most of them have already heard about my ridiculous accusation, they might as well hear the evidence too." Bella laughed nervously. "I don't know what you're talking about. We won the trip in an online contest. Tell her, Olivia." Olivia, sitting 2 seats away, gave a quick, jerky nod. "Yeah, Bella entered some travel giveaway. Super lucky." My mother stepped between us slightly, her hands raised in that peacemaker gesture she'd perfected over the years. "Let's not do this now. Bella and Olivia just got home. They're tired." "Misunderstanding," I repeated, pulling the folder from my bag. "Is that what we're calling theft now?" Bella's voice took on that trembling, wounded edge that used to fool me. "I don't know why you're doing this. It hurts that you'd accuse me of something so awful. You're my sister." Aunt Susan murmured sympathetically and put an arm around her. My father's face hardened. "That's enough, Marissa. We will not let you attack your sister with baseless accusations." I took a slow breath and laid the first document on the table. "The police don't seem to think they're baseless, and neither does my bank." It was the credit card transaction log, complete with timestamps and the originating IP address. "Here's the purchase for 2 first-class tickets to Tokyo, made from my apartment building's Wi-Fi network at 2:47 a.m. last Sunday." Murmurs rippled around the table. Bella's smile thinned. I laid down the next sheet, screenshots of her Instagram post, time-stamped to match the transactions. "Here's you at the airport at 6:15 a.m., champagne in hand, captioned, 'Surprise trip to Tokyo.'" My father's color drained slightly, but I wasn't done. I set down the hotel confirmation, addressed to bella.kane93@gmail.com. Mail to bella.kane93@gmail.com. Then, receipts from Ginza boutiques, each with her looping signature. The air was so tight with silence that the sound of the paper sliding across the table felt like a shout. Finally, I held up a small flash drive. "And this," I said, "is the security camera footage from my building. Would you like to see who walked into my bedroom at 2 in the morning?" That was when Bella's expression truly cracked. Bella's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal, searching for an escape. The fan she'd been holding trembled slightly in her hand before she set it down with forced care. "She said I could use it," Bella blurted suddenly, her voice rising. "Marissa told me I could use the card as a thank you for helping her with a work project." The room shifted, heads turning from her to me, then back to her. "I never said that," I replied evenly. "Well, she didn't say it directly," Bella amended quickly, her cheeks flushing. "But she implied it, and she owes me for all the times I've helped her." I opened my mouth to respond, but Olivia's voice, soft and nervous, cut through. "You told me she gave you the card as a birthday gift," she said, eyes wide. "You said it was already arranged between you two." Bella shot her a glare sharp enough to slice steel. "Shut up." Olivia looked down at her lap, but kept talking, maybe realizing the tide was turning. "You woke me up at 4 a.m. and said we had to pack for Tokyo because your sister had surprised you with tickets. I didn't know they were stolen." The word stolen landed heavy in the air, impossible to explain away. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's voice, when he finally spoke, was low and tight. "You went into her room while she was sleeping?" Bella's lip trembled, her old fallback move. "It was just borrowing. I was going to pay it back. Marissa has so much money. She wouldn't even miss $15,000. That casual entitlement, that assumption that my hard work was hers for the taking, seemed to finally pierce the armor my father had worn around her for nearly 30 years. His shoulders sagged, and for a moment he looked older than I'd ever seen him. Before anyone could say more, the doorbell rang. My father, still moving on autopilot, went to answer it. When he came back, Officer Garcia was standing in the doorway, her notepad tucked under one arm. "Miss Kane," she said, addressing me formally, "I received your message about additional evidence to add to your statement." Every eye in the room swung toward her. The presence of a police officer shattered whatever illusions my parents were still holding on to. This wasn't a family disagreement anymore. This was a criminal investigation. Bella's composure crumbled entirely. "You can't do this to me," she cried, looking frantically between our parents. "Tell her she can't do this. A criminal record will ruin my life." My father's voice was quiet but final. "Bella, this is beyond us now." For a split second, Bella just stood there, stunned, as if she couldn't process that my father had actually said it. Then the panic kicked in full force. "You're really going to let her ruin my life over a mistake?" she shouted, her voice cracking. "You've never turned your back on me before." My mother stepped forward, desperate, her hands clasping mine. "Marissa, please. She's your sister. We can work this out as a family. We'll pay you back. Just don't do this." I looked at her, really looked, and realized this was the same reflex she'd had my whole life. Patch the damage, protect Bella from consequences, keep the peace at any cost. Only now, the cost was mine. "How would she pay me back, Mom? She hasn't kept a job longer than 6 months in her entire adult life. Every time she messes up, you and Dad bail her out. That ends tonight." I turned to Officer Garcia. "I'd like to formally press charges for identity theft and credit card fraud, and I have all the supporting documents right here." Bella lunged toward me, eyes blazing, but my father caught her arm and held her back. "Don't make this worse," he murmured. Officer Garcia remained calm, stepping between us. "We'll need to take a statement from you as well," she told Bella. "You can come with me now, or we can do this downtown." Bella's voice wavered between fury and fear. "You're ruining my life over money. Is that all I am to you? A dollar amount?" I met her gaze steadily. "No, Bella, this isn't about money. This is about consequences. You've never had them, and it's damaged you. Maybe this will finally change that." The room was silent except for the faint scratch of Officer Garcia's pen on her pad. Around the table, relatives shifted in their seats. The same people who'd called me jealous or overreactive just days ago now avoided my eyes entirely. As Officer Garcia led Bella toward the door, my mother sank into a chair, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. My father stood rigid, staring at the evidence still spread across the dining table. The welcome home dinner had turned into a crime scene. The next weeks blurred into a mess of phone calls, paperwork, and pressure from every angle. My parents called daily at first, each time with a new proposal. "We'll cover the $15,000 right now if you drop the charges," my father said one evening. His tone clipped like it was a business transaction. The next day it was my mother, voice trembling. "Marissa, think about her future. She won't survive with a felony on her record. You know she's not built for that." I knew what they meant. Bella wasn't built for reality. Friends of the family reached out too, some well-meaning, some less so. One of my mother's friends left me a voicemail telling me I needed to protect the family name by handling this privately. My cousin Taylor sent a text that simply read, "Guess we know who the cold one is in the family now." The only voice that didn't waver was Stephanie's. She reminded me, over late-night pizza and cups of tea, why I'd started down this path in the first place. "You're not doing this to her," she said. "You're doing it for yourself, and maybe for her too." The court date came quicker than I expected. Bella arrived in a plain black dress, hair pulled back in a way that looked more like damage control than humility. She avoided my eyes, scanning the room until she spotted our parents in the back row. Judge Morrison was a small woman with sharp eyes who seemed to size Bella up in one glance. The case was straightforward. The transaction logs, the matching IP address, the receipts, the video stills from my building's security camera. Bella's lawyer tried to argue misunderstanding, but the evidence stacked higher than the excuse. When the verdict came, it was almost anticlimactic. Full restitution of the $15,000, 2 years of probation, and 200 hours of community service. The felony would remain on her record. Outside the courthouse, my father approached me, hands shoved deep in his coat pockets. "I think we failed you both," he said quietly, in very different ways. It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest I'd ever get from him, and for the moment, it was enough. In the weeks after court, my parents didn't give up trying to soften the blow for Bella. They offered to cover her restitution in full if I'd just let it go. They tried to find loopholes in her probation requirements, called in favors from friends in the legal field, and even suggested we all go to family therapy. Though the way my father framed it, you'd think the real issue was my anger and not Bella's theft. I didn't budge. I'd drawn my line, and for the first time in my life, I kept it. I told them I wouldn't attend family gatherings where Bella's actions were minimized or excused. I wouldn't participate in conversations that turned me into the problem for demanding the truth be acknowledged. If they wanted me there, the pretending had to stop. At first, my mother accused me of being unforgiving. My father said I was punishing the whole family for one mistake. Extended relatives chimed in with the usual be the bigger person speeches. But over time, the resistance wore down. Even my parents seemed to realize that their version of protecting Bella had never actually protected her at all. They cut off the financial lifeline. No more rent checks, no more emergency bailouts. Bella had to find work, any work, and keep it. She cycled through her old patterns at first, blaming managers, complaining about unfair hours, but with no safety net, those complaints led nowhere. Reality had sharp edges, and for the first time, she had to feel them. Olivia was the surprise. Within weeks of the sentencing, she showed up at my apartment with 2 large shopping bags. Inside were the designer items she'd bought in Tokyo, all still in pristine condition. She also handed me a letter, handwritten and a little messy, where she admitted she'd believed Bella's lies at first, but should have asked more questions. "I'm sorry I was part of hurting you. I'm trying to be more careful about the people I trust," she'd written. Her apology was real, and I accepted it. We even met for coffee a few times after that. As for me, I started therapy with Dr. Marshall, a woman with a voice so calm it made me want to exhale every time she spoke. Week by week, we worked through the mess. Not just the theft, but the years of smaller wounds that had come before it. The times my needs were treated as less important. The moments my reality was denied. The 1,000 tiny cuts that had left me doubting myself. Dr. Marshall called it unlearning the family script. And for the first time, I realized I was free to write my own. Dr. Marshall suggested I join a small support group for victims of family financial abuse. At first, I resisted. I didn't want to sit in a circle with strangers and compare wounds like war stories. But when I finally went, something shifted. There was a man whose brother had drained their joint inheritance without telling him, a woman whose parents had taken out loans in her name when she was still in college, another who'd co-signed for her sister's car, only to be saddled with the payments when it was repossessed. Different faces, different stories, but the same hollow betrayal. Hearing them talk, I felt less alone. And when I saw those further along in their healing, I realized there was a way through this, not just to survive, but to rebuild. Stephanie, as always, was my anchor. She never let me forget that my boundaries weren't just self-defense. They were a kind of tough love that my family had never practiced. "Real love doesn't mean protecting someone from the consequences of their actions," she said over Sunday brunch one week. "Sometimes it means stepping back and letting the crash happen." Professionally, I started to channel my experience into something useful. I worked with my firm's community outreach program to design a workshop on identity theft prevention, not the generic kind you find in pamphlets, but with a section specifically on protecting yourself from family. The uncomfortable truth was that this kind of betrayal was far more common than people wanted to admit. Months passed. The immediate sting of Bella's theft dulled, replaced by something steadier, a kind of wary calm. I could think about her without my chest tightening, but the trust between us was gone. The bridge burned clean through. Then, in early November, an invitation arrived from my father, Thanksgiving dinner at their house. Underneath, in his neat block handwriting, a single line: "Bella has something she wants to say to everyone, especially to you." I wasn't sure if it was a trap, a peace offering, or something in between, but I decided to go, not for her, for me, to see if there was anything left to salvage. Thanksgiving afternoon, I drove to my parents' house with a pie balanced on the passenger seat and my guard firmly in place. The air inside was different from the gatherings I remembered, quieter somehow, the laughter cautious, as if everyone was afraid of saying the wrong thing. I saw it in the way my mother smoothed the tablecloth 3 extra times, in how my father lingered near the kitchen doorway instead of taking his seat at the head of the table. Bella was already there, and at first I barely recognized her. Gone were the glossy waves of salon hair, the flashy nails, the designer dress. Her hair was pulled into a simple bun, and she wore a plain sweater that looked like it had seen more than one wash cycle. She looked smaller, not physically, but in presence. Dinner was tense but civil. Polite talk about work, weather, and the Patriots game. Nobody mentioned Tokyo. Nobody mentioned the court. It was as if the entire family was balancing on the edge of a glass floor, afraid one wrong word would shatter it. After dessert, my father cleared his throat. Bella has something she wants to say. She stood, hands clasped in front of her. I could see her fingers trembling. Her eyes moved around the table before finally landing on me. I want to apologize, she began, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. To all of you, but especially to Marissa. She took a shaky breath. What I did was inexcusable. I stole from you. I lied. And when you told the truth, I tried to make you feel crazy for saying it. There was no gloss in her tone, no crocodile tears, none of the performative remorse she'd wielded so easily before. I can't undo it, she said, but I can try to be someone who would never do that again. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know I'm sorry. For a long moment, I didn't say anything. Trust doesn't regrow in a single apology, but the fact that she'd stood there and said it in front of everyone, without excuse, without shifting blame, mattered. Thank you for saying that, I said finally. My voice was steady, but my pulse was loud in my ears. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. The rest of the evening moved slowly, as if the entire family were learning how to breathe in this new atmosphere. There were still moments of awkwardness. My mother hovering over Bella with offers of more pie, my father avoiding eye contact with me when the conversation drifted too close to the past. But beneath it all was something I'd never felt at a family gathering before. Honesty. It was brittle and tentative, like a bridge made of glass, but it was there, and that was new. Bella didn't try to monopolize the conversation or turn the night into a performance. She asked questions, listened, even admitted when she didn't have anything to add. I caught her watching me a few times, not with defiance, but as if she was trying to gauge if I believed her. I didn't, not entirely, not yet, but I also didn't feel the same sharp wall of anger I'd carried for months. That wall had thinned into something else, guarded curiosity. After everyone had left and I was gathering my coat, Bella approached me by the door. I meant what I said, she murmured. I'm trying. I know, I said, though my tone was measured. Trying is a start, but it's not the same as changing. She nodded without argument. That, more than anything, told me something might actually be different this time. On the drive home, I realized the theft had changed more than just my relationship with Bella. It had changed me. I no longer measured my worth by whether my family believed me. I didn't need their validation to trust my own reality. The $15,000 was gone and repaid, but what I'd gained, boundaries, clarity, a voice I didn't silence for comfort's sake, felt far more valuable. Winter settled in early that year, the kind of cold that makes the city feel quieter, as though even the air is holding its breath. In that stillness, I started to notice how different my life felt without the constant pull of family drama at my back. Therapy with Dr. Marshall became less about crisis management and more about building something new. We talked about the patterns I'd broken, how I no longer rushed to smooth over conflicts or pretended to agree just to keep the peace. She called it reclaiming your emotional real estate. I liked that. I kept going to the support group, too. I listened to others further along in their healing, and I began to share more of my own story. The more I spoke, the more I realized the theft had been just one moment in a much larger timeline, the culmination of years where my boundaries had been seen as obstacles instead of protections. Stephanie and I made a tradition of Sunday brunches, a new ritual to replace the family dinners I no longer felt obligated to attend. Over eggs and coffee, she reminded me how far I'd come. "You're not reacting anymore," she said one morning. "You're choosing. That's the difference." Work also took a turn I hadn't expected. My identity theft presentation, especially the section about financial abuse by family, drew more attention than anything I'd done in my career. People lingered after sessions to tell me their own stories, some eerily similar to mine. A few even said hearing it had convinced them to finally set boundaries they'd been afraid to enforce. Every so often, Bella texted me. Nothing deep, just a photo of her cat or a link to a show we both liked. I didn't always respond right away. I wasn't ready to give her the easy access she'd once had. But I didn't shut the door completely either. By the time the snow started to melt, I realized I no longer felt that constant tightness in my chest when I thought about my family. I didn't forgive everything, but I wasn't carrying it like a weight anymore. By spring, life had a new rhythm. My boundaries weren't just lines in the sand anymore. They were reinforced, like steel beams holding up the structure of my life, and for once, I wasn't apologizing for them. When my father invited me to a small family barbecue in April, I almost declined. But something in his voice, softer, less certain, made me say yes. When I arrived, the gathering was smaller than usual, just my parents, Bella, and a couple of cousins. There was no grand performance, no pretense that everything was fine. Bella was at the grill with my dad, hair tied back, wearing jeans and a faded t-shirt. She looked ordinary, in a way I'd never seen before. When she saw me, there was no flinch, no overly bright smile, just a nod. Later, as we stood by the fence away from the others, she spoke quietly. "I'm not going to ask you to forget it," she said. "I know I can't undo what I did, but I am trying to be better, Marissa, not just for you, for me." I studied her face. For the first time, there was no angle, no performance, just tired honesty. "Change takes more than trying," I told her. "It takes showing up differently, over and over." "I know," she said, and I believed her, not completely, but more than before. Driving home that evening, I thought about how much had shifted since that night she crept into my room. The money was gone and returned, but what I'd gained had no price tag. The certainty of my own truth, the ability to hold my ground, and the freedom from needing my family's belief to validate my reality. Sometimes the worst loss you suffer is the one that finally teaches you what you're worth. And once you know that, no one, not even family, can take it from you again.